The college football playoff rankings were revealed on Tuesday evening, and many people like myself and possibly Jeff are wondering if the Ohio State Buckeyes were going to move up after their beatdown of the Purdue Boilermakers over the weekend. Did they move up? Does head-to-head matter to the committee like we think it should? And our level of concern for the Ohio State defense. I gave my number yesterday. I told Jeff my number has changed based off some factors that didn't hit my mind yesterday. All that and more in this live episode of Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. We are live on a Tuesday evening, November 16th in the year 2021 on youtube.com/Locked On Buckeyes and my personal Twitter page at JStevens07. I want to thank everyone out there for making Locked On Buckeyes their number one listen of every single day. It's a Tuesday evening, Wednesday for many people listening to the audio version, and my guy Jeff Hunt from the Off the Ball Network is here with us to break down the college football playoff rankings. Jeff, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Like every week this builds up and builds up. We knew there wouldn't be a lot of movement this week, but yet I'm still very excited about it. We can clearly see the playoff picture now and the scenarios and the chaos scenarios, as I like to call them. So this I'm looking forward to this. I'm glad to be on, and it's going to be fun.
A lot of fun. The Buckeyes win big. They beat down pummel the Purdue over the weekend. Probably should have been a bigger margin of victory, but it is what it is. Ohio State, after their beat down over the weekend, Michigan State looking like Michigan State over the weekend against Maryland, Oklahoma losing, Oklahoma State looking like Oklahoma State. Ohio State did not move this week in the college football playoff rankings. They're still at number 4. 1 through 4 go like this. There actually is no movement. Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2, Oregon number 3, Ohio State number 4. In the grand scheme of things, Jeff, it's not the end of the world. Ohio State, if they win out, they will be right where they want to be at the end of the season in a college football playoff. And actually, right now, you can't ask for anything else except for we take care of business, we're in.
Yeah, if you'd have told me, I'll be completely honest. If you'd have told me week 2 that this would be the scenario, and people tried to tell me, and I'm like, no, I don't see this playing out. I did not see Oregon having the season, that they've had. I did not see Michigan State and Michigan having the season that they had, so on and so forth. Here's what it boils down to: Ohio State. It is laid out for them. They'd have to win. They can win by 1 point for 3 games in a row, and they're going to go to the playoffs. That's what the committee has told them. That's what I see in the top 4. The entire top 4. If you guys went out, you're in. This will be the playoff, scenario for you guys. So it does take some of the burden of, margin of victory. It takes some of the burden of, style points and all these things. It takes them off these teams. The top 4 is simply just has to win.
Yeah, that's it. And I know earlier in the year when Ohio State had the string of 4 straight 50-point games, I think by game number 3, Ryan Day sending a message to the college football world, which includes the committee. I was thinking in my mindset, the committee, they're human. They can be swayed, just like the old school BCS system could be swayed by style points and running up the score and margin of victory being a whole lot wider. It seems like they don't care about that at all. It seems like they don't care about the things that normal human beings care about. 13 people in a room, yeah, their thoughts are going to be different than if there were 51 or 81 or 103. I'm putting odd numbers on purpose because you don't want to get an even vote at a time when you're trying to put teams in order of ranking. They don't. It seems like the thing that sway humans, that sway humans, doesn't impact them. A beatdown of a team in Purdue that's a good football team, bro. It just happened to be like they ran into a juggernaut of an offense that I don't know, not many people in the college football can stop. Maybe a handful or slow down. I'll say slow down, if that. I'm confused because all of the big margins of victories and the wins doesn't really impact how the committee looks at Ohio State.
No, it's almost it's funny that you say that. I was thinking the same thing. It's almost like they set their season up in stages of like, okay, weeks, whatever, 1 through 3, you have to, once again, Jay, you've brought it up many times. We wish they would give us the criteria, but it's almost like they have these, check the boxes. And kudos to Ryan Day for that, mid-season run, with honestly just lesser opponents to really, really show off, his offense, because that is what's made the difference in this season. I know that, they start after that Tulsa game, we were all like, how are we going to figure this out? And then they go on this barrage, for 4 games, and that put them at a certain point. And now it's like the committee is almost, to me, in their mind, I think that they're looking at, okay, let's play out this tournament in our heads, time after time, who can play who. And honestly, like if you look at Georgia, the thought's got to be, okay, let's start with Georgia. We know they're number 1. Who can play with them? Ohio State's got to be up there just because they have this dynamic, they have the firepower, they have the skill set, they have the positions. So I think that helps. It's this, to me, I really think that they're playing out these make-believe scenarios in their head of like who can do this and who can do that. And I don't blame them for having Oregon up there. They've got the win over Ohio State. They proved that they can do that. But they're a tough team. They can really run the ball. The defense plays really well when it's dialed in. It's really good. The quarterback does everything they can. So some of this, I think, is they're really playing it out in their head of like, I think this is what is keeping Cincinnati out of the top 4, I guess is what I'm getting at. And you're right. It's almost like now it's like, okay, you guys had your style points earlier. Now this is the win portion of the competition. And, let's see what you're made of for the next, month of the season. It's, it's what we said. They took all the risk at the first release playoff rankings. We all went crazy. We all lost our minds. And then they settled in and they're like, okay, here's what we're stuck with. And now we're not moving off this. Full disclosure, it fully benefits Ohio State. That first ranking fully benefited Ohio State. But as a college football fan, I can see the frustration if you're Oklahoma State, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, any of these teams on the fringe that are forced to work their way up because now they've shown that they're not going to give anybody these big jumps.
Jeff, you just said something, and it just kind of dawned on me. We're talking about the 50-point wins and Ryan Day having this streak of where Ohio State was really running through teams very, very, very easily, just like they seemingly ran through Purdue. Now, the 31 points may scare some people. We'll talk about that later on at the end of the show. But Ohio State has 5 50-point games this year. It just hit me. I know it was 4 in a row. They just put 50 up against Purdue. That's not a bad football team that they did that to. And it still seems like nobody's really realizing what Ohio State is. Yes, guys, we'll go through. I know we're going a little bit longer on Ohio State this week than normal. We'll go through the top 10 here in a second. But it seems like to me, the respect that you used to get, especially if Urban Meyer were there, if he had 5 50-point games in one season, it seems like his teams, even if there was one loss, would have gotten a lot more respect than this team is getting right now.
Yeah, there's something to that. And I said that earlier this week. And I'm not saying, we'll talk about it. I am not saying that I don't see the defense, and I do see what people are seeing in the cautious and all that. But that also, if the same Oklahoma team that they have right now that just lost last week had done this season what Ohio State's done, they'd be number 2 in the country, and it wouldn't even. I mean, it wouldn't even be a question. Ohio State is being judged weird, almost under the microscope. And it was funny that Reese Davis brought it up on the show tonight. This entire playoff hinges around Ohio State, whether it's the Oregon win over them, whether it's the 2 Michigan teams get to play them, it's so many things hinge on this Ohio State team. It is really, really, really the center of college football universe this year is the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's been kind of a phenomenal, year, and it keeps going. Let's hope it keeps going this way.
I sure hope so. Guys, let's go through numbers 10 through 1 very quickly. We went through 1 through 4, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. We're going to go 10 through 1 in that order and then kind of dive into some things that are going on with this. Also hit on a team that's outside of the top 10. Jeff already mentioned a loss over the weekend. Got to hit them as well. Number 10, Wake Forest, 9-1. I do believe, Jeff, they play Clemson. And Clemson is still in the running to play for the ACC championship. So all the stuff about Clemson early in the season, all of the injuries, we get it. They can still win an ACC championship, which is amazing for what the things that have happened to them this season. Number 9, Oklahoma State, 9-1. Still got to play Oklahoma in Bedlam Thanksgiving weekend. Number 8, Notre Dame. Quietly still there. I'll leave it at that. Number 7, Michigan State. Number 6, Michigan. Number 5, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is still undefeated. They beat Indiana, which is not much of a win right now. They did go on the road and beat Notre Dame, I believe, by 2 scores earlier in the year. 4, Ohio State, 3, Oregon, 2, Alabama, 1, Georgia. Jeff, I want to just kind of talk about something very quickly. Turn it back over to you. Oklahoma drops 5 spots after a loss over the weekend. What you said about Oklahoma is key. Because I do believe that if Ohio State was doing this and they were Oklahoma, that they would be viewed a whole lot different, kind of viewed like Alabama is right now. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma has always been viewed in a way that the committee viewed them as a flawed team, even though they were undefeated. And I think they kind of had a feeling at some point Oklahoma is going to lose, just based off how they kind of viewed an undefeated team in Oklahoma. They lost over the weekend, number 13. Yeah, they can still play for the Big 12 championship. Some people say they're out of it. I'm not sure if they completely are. If they just turn things around and run right through teams, say Wake Forest loses, Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State in Bedlam, Notre Dame has a loss. I mean, Oklahoma could be up in the top 6 here very quickly if some people in front of them just start falling and losing.
Yeah, I've got Oklahoma outside of my possible. I cut it off at Baylor at 11, 11 like remotely possible teams that can still make the playoff. And because of what you just said, the committee, and kudos to the committee. They told us day one, Oklahoma's not that team. We watched them play against Kansas the other day. Or not, sorry, I was Texas. I'm sorry. We watched Oklahoma, lose to Baylor. We watched them lose. He's switching quarterbacks and all this out. The point being, the committee got that one right. We had all given the benefit of the doubt all year and kept saying, well, any minute. Well, it never came about. I don't see, like, when I really started going through the wins and losses for everybody playing each other, especially because of the Big Ten East, the way it's set up, I don't think Oklahoma can sneak back into it without. I don't see, I guess my point being, I don't see how either Notre Dame or Cincinnati, just pick one of the two. I don't see how both of them can possibly drop below Oklahoma. And I don't see how one of the Big East teams can't be above them. And then therefore, I don't think they can jump Bama under any circumstances. They definitely can't jump Georgia. I don't think Oregon, unless Oregon falls apart and loses 2 to Utah. But then at that point, we might be talking about Utah jumping Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma State is the team out of the Big 12 that I like the most to go to the playoffs. And I've said that since day one this year.
Utah. They're down at number 23. And I know Utah plays Oregon this week. There's a possibility of them playing twice, playing them again in Vegas for the Pac-12 championship. That's a team right there that if Utah handles or beats or just beats Oregon, could be a one point win. If they beat Oregon, Oregon's gone. I mean, Oregon's out of it. Oregon's not a bad football team, but just Oregon's gone. Kind of the way that things work right now, the domino effect of wins and losses. Here's where things don't sit well with me, and they have not set well with me for a very long time. The committee once again says, Michigan, we're going to rank you ahead of Michigan State after you just lost to your rival. I don't care if it's a home loss, road loss, don't matter. You just lost to Michigan State. You were up 16. You lost the game. Michigan State won, but Michigan State, head-to-head does not matter. Oregon, Ohio State. With everything Ohio State has done this year, the ups, the downs, winning games in a way that it's very, very hard. Winning is hard to begin with. But then when you're winning games like this, consistently throughout the season, it's hard. Oregon has not done that. You and I talked about it. Stanford, not a good football team. It's going to hurt Notre Dame down the road. There are other teams in the Pac-12. You can say what you want about Joe Moorhead not being there. The Pac-12 has bad football teams that Oregon has beat, but the committee is not looking at it the same way. They're simply saying the head-to-head matchup is what's propelling Oregon over Ohio State, not how they looked on the football field. That confuses me. Cincinnati and Notre Dame. I wonder, and I talked about this briefly with you, there is a weird way, that Notre Dame could jump Cincinnati in this because one's playing Power 5 schools, one playing Group of 5 schools, Notre Dame not playing in a conference championship game, Cincinnati possibly losing that 13th game. That is something that I don't think anybody looks at. And I think if they played again at this point in the season, some people might say Notre Dame is the betting favorite to win. It's a lot going on here in this top. Yes, Ohio State, they are where they are. There's a lot of other intriguing pieces and moving parts here that are going to be amazing to watch down the stretch of the college football season.
Yeah, to touch on that, I'm not sure that Wisconsin doesn't beat Notre Dame if they play tomorrow. Like Wisconsin's a team that's on the rise. Like that's why I said the Big Ten East is set up so well. Like they've got they get to play each other, and then they get to play more than likely a good Wisconsin team. Whoever comes out of the three, they get to play a good Wisconsin team at the end. Like they're whichever team, obviously Ohio State or Michigan State, whichever one of them wins out is guaranteed, I think, to go to the playoffs. And then Michigan next because of tiebreakers, but either way, one of those three, I don't see a world that one of them doesn't make the playoffs. And with Wisconsin playing so good really helps that. But also Wisconsin playing so good helps Notre Dame. At the end of the year, the head-to-head is going to be the only argument that Cincinnati has, whether it's their fault or not, that they didn't play any other of these teams. We'll see how good Houston looks this weekend. That's going to determine a lot for Cincinnati. But this is what kind of bothers me. You got the Cincinnati discussion. Their season's going to hinge on how good Houston is, as to where, Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama's looking at a Georgia game. Georgia's got to play Alabama, even though Georgia's already sewed up, their portion of the SEC. So that's where the argument comes in. Like, oh, I feel bad for Cincinnati that they have this Houston left on the schedule. Like, as a Buckeye fan, and this is not a dig at Cincinnati, this is honesty, I would love that our biggest game left was Houston. I would feel so good about going to the playoffs right now, and that's just a real thing. I'm not going to deny that. So I do think there's a world, and Notre Dame looks really good, and I do think there is a crazy scenario to where Notre Dame can sneak into this. I think some things have to go wrong because of those conference championship games. I don't know if the committee will let a conference championship game loss affect a team and then compared to a team that doesn't play one. That's what we really don't know. And we saw this happen with Wisconsin. The Buckeyes knocked Wisconsin out of the playoffs, I think about 3 years ago. Or maybe 4 years ago now. Wisconsin's undefeated. They go to the Big Ten championship game. The Ohio State beats them. Wisconsin doesn't get to go to the playoffs. Alabama gets in because they didn't play a championship game that night. Can Notre Dame pull that off? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Do you see a scenario, Jeff, where a 2-loss Alabama, where Alabama loses in the SEC championship? I was going to predict the Iron Bowl, but with Bo Nix out for the season, I'm not sure if Auburn has a chance. Now, however, crazy things have happened in college football.
Yep.
So I'm not going to say it's just a foregone conclusion that Auburn's going to win the Iron Bowl. But do you see a scenario where there's a 2-loss Alabama, they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship, and then there's an undefeated Cincinnati, 13-0 versus 11-2, and Alabama still gets in over them because they viewed as the better football team?
I don't, and the reason I don't is exactly what you just brought up. It's because the win over Auburn is not going to mean anything now. And that's what hurt Alabama. Alabama needed Auburn. They really needed them to finish off the game Saturday, and they needed them, to be pretty good going into the Iron Bowl so they could have that one more victory. So now Alabama doesn't have that one more victory. And they've got a tough schedule, but they're not going to get credit for winning. We've talked about this with Ohio State. Ohio State played Purdue. Once it's over, they're like, oh, okay, whatever. Alabama has to play Arkansas. Arkansas is a really good football team. They're in the top 25, but if they beat them, they're going to be like, well, you should have beat them. They're going to play Auburn. You just brought it up. They're not going to have Bo Nix. No matter how they beat Auburn, they're not going to get a ton of credit. So they can only go backwards. So I think that Auburn, basically Nix being out in the Auburn game really took it. So then, and if those games are close at all, then Alabama's wasted. They have no benefit of the doubt. It would have to be nuts, I think, for Alabama, a 2-loss Alabama team to make the playoffs. I know it's fun for everybody to argue about on Twitter and say that Alabama's definitely getting in. I really don't think that's the case. I think that Oregon would jump them, or Ohio State or Michigan State. Any of those teams, I think, jumps a 2-loss Alabama. And I think so does Cincinnati. An undefeated Cincinnati definitely gets in over two-loss Alabama.
About to move to our last thing, Jeff, but very quickly, I want to ask you this question. Do you think Ohio State wins out?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
honestly do at this point. I was shaky last week, but then I put, I don't put everything in the betting lines, but, when Vegas puts these lines out and they're so confident in the Buckeyes, essentially the only reason I would think they can't is because I'm a fan and I'm nervous. I do see deficiencies, but then I go back and look and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I think Michigan's the best team left on the schedule. They had trouble scoring against Penn State. They needed, not that they get full credit for that game, but then I'm like, how good do I think Penn State is? And like, I don't think they're that good. I know that we should have blew them out. So if I'm an analyst, I don't have anything that I can come up with to say that Ohio State isn't going to win out.
Okay. Good deal.
As a fan, I'm scared.
I think we both have our nerves going crazy at times during games. Our level of concern for the Ohio State defense. Going to close out the show with this one. If you're watching right now the video, you can see Jeff's face, and he shook his head just a little bit because Jeff and I talk about this briefly every now and then. Jeff, yesterday, I'm going to tell you where I was yesterday and where I am today. So yesterday, Jeff, I said my level of concern, 1 being the least concerned, 10 being the most concerned, kind of anxious, sweating when you watch games, things like that. I was at a level 3. I upped it to a 5.5, and here's why. I think the run defense is amazing. I'm not worried about the run defense. I'm curious is that if this game gets into a pass-happy type of attack, that the Ohio State defensive coordinator, whoever it is, defensive coaches, we know who they are, they'll continue to play guys and rotate them throughout the game. If Ohio State would play their best players consistently, I don't care if it's just situationally, play them consistently, I firmly believe I would be back at a level 3. There's pass defense. I understand Ohio State rushed 3 last week, only got 1 QB pressure, no quarterback hits, no sacks at all throughout the entire game. That was startling to me when I looked at that at the end of the game. But the one thing with this team is, Ryan Day said it after the game. He said that we had 8 guys in coverage. I don't care who you're playing. You're in college. If you got a quarterback that can look and pick apart a zone where you have 8 guys in coverage, that concerns me. My level of concern is not so much at 8 or a 9, because I know that Ohio State, Michigan State can torch you via the air, but only if Kenneth Walker III is running around and doing his thing. Peyton Thorne is limited, but he's a good quarterback. I'm not going to try to diminish that. Michigan, you lost one of your running backs. You only got Hassan Haskins. Caden McNamara flourishes because of the running game. Take the running game away, I don't think Michigan can score enough points to keep up with you. Wisconsin's pass defense is amazing, assuming they get to the Big Ten championship. The quarterback can't throw. So based off who Ohio State's playing, assuming Wisconsin goes to the Big Ten championship game, that's kind of where I am right now. 3 yesterday, looking at how they rotate guys and how the free safety has played of late. I'll just say that right there. I'm at a 5.5 right now because of the pass defense. I trust Brown. I trust Burke. I trust Joe Chambers. I trust Zach Harrison and Tyreek Smith to get pressure if there's a 4-man rush or you blitz a linebacker. There has to be some added things at times. I know Harrison and Smith are really, really good, so I do think they'll get pressure 4-man rush, not 3-man rush. So got to keep it in context. If there's no pass rush at all, bro, those guys can't cover nobody.
Yeah. I'm a little higher. I'm at a 7.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Now, first of all, and I know that this is a hot button issue amongst Buckeye fans, this zone defense. I called for it early on in the season. I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong, but I will say that I think it's the right way to go. For example, I saw something last week, in the Washington football team in the NFL beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady's their quarterback. They ran 71% zone defense and beat Tom Brady. So the zone defense can work. But here's and what I do like about especially Michigan State with Walker back there, the defense that we started the year in where we turn our back on the line of scrimmage, a guy like Walker might have 250 yards, and I'm not even exaggerating that. Yes. I mean, and that's college football. I would say the same thing if I was a Michigan State fan about Ohio State. Like, I'm not being unfair here. So I don't mind keeping it in front of you. this team isn't ready to mix it up like we want them to. Jay,
Mhm.
you did a great job discussing how we're not upsetting the routes and getting the receivers off schedule. You did a great job on your I think it was your post game show. You brought
Appreciate
that
that.
up, and you're completely right. Like we're not getting anybody off time, but what I don't like is the thing about when you play zone, whether it's, I don't care if it's a man zone, I don't care if it's cover three, whatever it is, essentially, if you have a single high safety, which, High State does a lot now, what you've created is, and I call it this, like it's a head-to-head poker match between the free safety and the quarterback of the opponent. That's what it's supposed to be. Free safety is supposed to make the quarterback change his mind. The quarterback is supposed to, manipulate and compromise the free safety. And when I watch the video, what we have right now at safety is we're not playing the game. Like it's one-sided. Like, if you draw a whiteboard and you draw the X's up there and you draw the O's, our X's are doing exactly what they want the coaches to do. They're playing it more like when I started playing free safety in high school when I was a freshman, it was base, like, you stand here, look at the quarterback's eyes and his hips, he looks this way, drift this way, he looks this way, drift this way. It's kind of like that. So it's not a cat and mouse game that they're
Mm-mm.
playing right now, and that's what worries me. Michigan State, they've got veteran guys out there, so-called, in college football, and we saw it with Purdue. Those receivers like really take advantage of those zones. They catch the ball. We talked about it. They're going another 10 to 15 yards, running the ball. So that's what scares me more than anything, especially with play action passing with these good running teams coming up. You have to be looking at the line of scrimmage. So that is why I'm at a 7. Now, if you're going to tell me the High State offense isn't going to miss a beat, I'm not worried about it, obviously, but I don't want to depend on that. I don't want to, I don't want a sprained ankle, if that, let's face it, in that game against Purdue, there was a couple plays there in the second quarter. Like they had they had 2 fumbles on 2 possessions.
Mhm,
High
mhm.
State takes advantage of it. That game gets out of control. If you flip that, I don't think that game looks like it did. I really don't. I'm not being negative Nancy here. I'm just being honest that we never did anything. Here's what I told everybody that argued with me. In the first quarter, the High State defense was trying to stop Purdue, and they were still throwing the ball. It wasn't just the fourth quarter like junk time. And then if all a team's going to do is pass, and you can't pin your ears back and get any pressure, the combination of lack of pressure, if they've got one more second, then you got an inexperienced secondary. That is a bad combination. And I really worry about getting trapped into these big play action, the passing game. So that worries me more than anything. As far as the guy like Burke, he's kind of stepped up. Banks is I don't know where I'm at with Banks right now. Like it's like every other play. I love him, and then I'm like, man, it's just kind of one of these. I've just latched onto him. I'm like, that's my guy. The linebackers are still figuring it out. Chambers gets better every game, and I think he's a guy that can step up in a big game. But it's just understanding the game. I think a savvy quarterback can take advantage of it. But you pointed out we don't have no disrespect to the quarterbacks coming up, but I think we probably just I don't know maybe Mertz, but I think we might have just played the best quarterback out of the last 4 games Ohio State's going to play. I hope so. I don't know.
I mean, you got Peyton Thorne, Michigan State. You got Caden McNamara from Michigan. Nothing really amazing. I mean, if it's Grant Mertz from Wisconsin, he's limited, extremely
Yeah.
limited. If
Yeah.
it's Iowa, because I think Iowa's still up there too. Iowa's ranked.
Yeah, they've still got a shot.
Iowa's number 17, Wisconsin number 15. I believe they either play each other. I forget if they played each other or not, but I know that they still got it. Both teams still have a shot. I know Minnesota was close, but I think Minnesota lost over the weekend.
Yeah.
So if you're going to give me Spencer Petras or Alex Padilla from Iowa,
yeah.
I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about it at all.
Yeah.
Tanner Morgan from Minnesota, not worried about it. Graham Mertz, not worried about it. Like, the quarterbacks aren't there. The one thing that I know is you can manipulate that safety.
Yeah.
Not saying names. I mentioned it a couple days ago.
Yeah.
You can manipulate him very easily.
Yes.
I don't believe he should be playing right now. I think they should have tried to rotate guys at that position earlier in the season. They did a little bit, but it is what it is.
And I want to point out to real quick, I don't want to say I want to point out to everybody like they don't watch, but I just want to remind that a lot of this stuff's called by the sidelines. Like, these coaches look at the defensive lineup. So you're not just playing against a quarterback, you're playing against the guys on the sideline. That's what those cue cards are for. That's what those signals are for. That's why, when you get so frustrated the team doesn't snap the ball until 3 seconds left on the play clock, yeah, it's because the coach is reading the defense for him up in the booth, and he's signaling it down, and then the head coach is signaling it in. So it's not the NFL to where they cut off the communications. Like, you've got eyes in the sky looking at the defense, and that is it's not an unfair advantage. It's realistic. So, I always try to remind people that you're not just like, we look at these quarterbacks and we're like, but they're also told like, hey man, the left deep third is going to be open to, on the, whatever the 7 route or whatever it is, what they see. And that's when you see some of these games happen that way. That is exactly what is going on.
Jeff, it's a fun show, man. Tuesday evening, rankings come out. Talk a little ball, talk a little Ohio State, talk a little speculation. I love it. Let the good people know where they can catch you on Twitter and all the amazing things going on at the Off the Ball Network.
Well, if you're just listening, I'm at jhunt006. I do Jeff Needs Sports. You can find me anywhere you get your podcast, and you can go to offtheballnetwork.com and check out me and all the other guys doing a lot of really good stuff right now, having a lot of fun with college football. And once again, I want to thank Jay and Locked On Network for having me on.
Absolutely, guys. You guys can always follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. The plan is to have Jeff back next week for Tuesday evening for the recap show. The final rankings come out the 28th, the Sunday. Sorry if you couldn't hear me. The Sunday after Thanksgiving. Excuse me. I'm off. I'm a week off. The first Sunday in December. My days are all off, Jeff. My first Sunday in December.
It should be December 5th. Hopefully I will be in Indianapolis. Maybe me and Jay will do a live show.
It's possible, guys. I'm sorry I'm having so much fun with Jeff. Forgot my dates mixed up. The plan is to have Jeff back with us next week to instantly react to the rankings once again. Make sure I appreciate everybody out there for making Locked On Buckeyes their first listen of every single day. And if you're down to make some money betting on the sports, make sure you check out the Locked On Bets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. A lot of stuff, good stuff, lock of the day, amazing things to help you put more money in your bank account. Guys, myself, Jeff Hunt, we are out of here. Jeff will be back next week. I'll be back tomorrow.